The stagecoach lurched to a violent stop outside Spokane, Washington Territory, throwing Rebecca Crawford against the wooden seat so hard her teeth rattled. And through the dusty window she glimpsed the tall figure of the man she was supposed to marry standing in the afternoon sun like a question she did not yet know how to answer. Her hands trembled as she smoothed down her traveling dress, the dark green fabric now covered in a fine layer of trail dust from the 3-week journey that had brought her from Pennsylvania to this rough frontier town in the summer of 1878. The driver's gruff voice announced their arrival, and Rebecca felt her stomach twist into knots that had nothing to do with the rough roads they had traveled. She was 22 years old, unmarried by choice until now, and about to meet Benjamin Irwin for the first time despite having agreed through correspondence to become his wife. The door swung open, and a weathered hand reached up to help her down. Rebecca gathered her carpetbag and accepted the assistance, stepping into the bright July sunshine that made her squint after hours in the dim coach. The heat hit her immediately, dry and intense, so different from the humid summers back home. She stood on unsteady legs, looking around at the rough wooden buildings that lined the main street, at the horses tied to hitching posts, at the men in worn denims and dusty hats who paused in their activities to stare at the newcomer. And then he approached. Benjamin Irwin was taller than she had imagined, well over 6 feet, with shoulders broad enough to fill a doorway. He wore a simple white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, dark pants held up by suspenders, and a brown hat that shaded eyes she could not quite make out yet. His walk was unhurried, confident without being cocky, and when he stopped a respectful distance away and removed his hat, she saw a face tanned by years of sun and wind, with a strong jaw, a straight nose, and eyes the color of the summer sky. "Miss Crawford," he said, his voice deep and quiet. "I am Benjamin Irwin. I hope your journey was not too difficult." Rebecca found her voice, though it came out smaller than she intended. "Mr. Irwin, the journey was long but manageable." He nodded slowly, studying her face with an intensity that made her want to look away, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. She needed to see the man she had agreed to marry, to read whatever truth might exist in his expression. What she saw was not what she had feared. There was no hardness there, no cruelty in the lines around his eyes. Instead, she saw something careful, almost gentle, and a wariness that matched her own. "You are probably tired and hungry," Benjamin said. "I have arranged for you to stay at Mrs. Harriet Sullivan's boarding house until the wedding. She is a good woman who will make you comfortable and answer any questions you might have about the town." The wedding. The words hung between them like a physical presence. Rebecca had agreed to marry him in 2 weeks, giving herself time to adjust and to be certain of her decision. But standing here now, looking at this stranger who was supposed to become her husband, the doubts she had carried across a continent seemed to multiply and press against her chest. "That is very thoughtful," she managed. "Thank you." Benjamin picked up her trunk as if it weighed nothing and gestured down the street. "Mrs. Sullivan's place is just this way. I will walk with you if that is acceptable." They moved through the town slowly, Benjamin adjusting his long stride to match her shorter steps. Rebecca noticed how people greeted him, how men nodded with respect and women smiled with genuine warmth. Whatever else Benjamin Irwin might be, he was clearly well regarded here. That should have been comforting, but Rebecca felt too uncertain about everything to take comfort in anything yet. "Spokane is still growing," Benjamin said, apparently feeling the need to fill the silence. "We have got a good school now, and Dr. James Whitfield arrived last year. The railroad is coming through, which means more businesses, more people. It is becoming a proper town." "How long have you been here?" Rebecca asked, genuinely curious despite her nervousness. 8 years. I came in 1870 when I was 20. Worked as a ranch hand first, saved my money and bought my own place 4 years ago. It is not large, but it is mine. Good land, good water, room to grow. 28 years old then. 6 years her senior. His letters had mentioned his age, but hearing it confirmed made him more real somehow. This was not a fantasy or a distant possibility. This was a man, flesh and blood and real, who wanted to make her his wife. The boarding house was a 2-story structure painted white with green shutters, notably cleaner and better maintained than many of the surrounding buildings. A woman emerged onto the porch before they reached the steps, wiping her hands on her apron. She was perhaps 50, with graying brown hair pulled into a neat bun and a round, friendly face. "You must be Miss Crawford," the woman said warmly. "I am Harriet Sullivan. Welcome to Spokane." Come in, come in. You must be exhausted." Benjamin carried Rebecca's trunk inside to a small but clean room on the second floor. He set it down carefully near the bed and turned to face her, hat in his hands. Up here, in the smaller space, Rebecca was even more aware of his size, though he seemed to deliberately make himself less imposing, keeping his distance and his voice soft. "I know this must be strange for you," he said. "Coming all this way to meet someone you only know through letters. I want you to know that the 2 weeks before the wedding are yours. If you need more time, we can wait longer. If you decide this is not what you want, I will buy you a ticket back to Pennsylvania and hold no hard feelings. I want a wife who chooses to be here, not one who feels trapped." The words surprised Rebecca enough that she sat down on the edge of the bed. She had expected pressure, persuasion, perhaps even demands. Instead, Benjamin was offering her freedom even after she had agreed to come, even after he had surely spent a considerable sum on her travel. "Why did you send for a bride?" she asked suddenly. "A man like you, well respected with property. Surely there are women here who would marry you." Something flickered across Benjamin's face, too quick to identify. "There are not many unmarried women in Spokane, Miss Crawford. And those who are here are mostly already spoken for or not interested in ranch life. But more than that, I wanted someone who chose this life deliberately. The women here were born to it or came with families. You chose to come to try something different. That takes courage, and I admire courage." He moved toward the door, then paused. "I will come by tomorrow afternoon if that suits you. Perhaps I can show you some of the town, introduce you to people. Only if you are willing." "That would be acceptable," Rebecca said, because she needed to know more, to understand who this man was before she could even begin to consider actually marrying him. After Benjamin left, Harriet Sullivan brought up a basin of warm water and fresh towels. "That Benjamin Irwin is a good man," she said as Rebecca washed the travel dust from her face and hands. "Honest as the day is long. He has helped half the people in this town at one time or another, never asking for anything in return. You could do far worse, dear." "You do not think it is strange, marrying someone I just met?" Rebecca asked. Harriet smiled. "Half the marriages out here start that way. What matters is not how they start, but how they continue. My own husband, God rest his soul, I knew 3 days before we married. We had 28 good years together before the fever took him. It is not about time, it is about character." That night, lying in the unfamiliar bed, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the frontier town, Rebecca thought about character. Benjamin's letters had been straightforward and honest, never flowery or overly romantic. He had told her about his ranch, about the work involved, about the harsh winters and hot summers. He had not painted a false picture of easy comfort. He had been clear that ranch life was hard work, but that he believed in building something lasting, something good. He wanted a partner, he had written, not just a housekeeper. someone to build a life with. It had been that honesty that had convinced Rebecca to accept his proposal. That, and the fact that her options in Pennsylvania had been severely limited. Her family had lost their small dry goods store when her father died 2 years ago, leaving Rebecca and her mother in genteel poverty, dependent on the charity of relatives who made their displeasure known at every opportunity. Her mother had passed last winter, leaving Rebecca alone and with few prospects. She could have become a governess or taken in sewing, living on the edges of other people's lives, or she could take a chance on something different. But taking a chance and actually following through were two different things. Now that she was here, seeing the reality of this place, meeting the actual man, all her doubts came rushing back. What did she really know about Benjamin Irwin? What if his patience was just an act, and once they were married he would show a different face? What if she hated ranch life? What if she could not do the work required? What if they could not learn to even like each other, let alone love? Sleep came eventually, but it was restless and filled with anxious dreams. Benjamin arrived the next afternoon promptly at 2 o'clock, freshly shaved and wearing what were clearly his best clothes, though still practical and well worn. Rebecca had changed into a lighter dress, more suitable for the summer heat, and tried to tame her dark hair into something presentable. They walked through Spokane together, Benjamin pointing out the various establishments. The general store, run by a cheerful man named Thomas Green who had come from Ohio. The blacksmith shop, where a giant of a man named Harold worked the forge. The small church where Reverend Peter Matthews held services every Sunday. The saloon, which Benjamin only pointed out in passing without suggesting they go near it, and Rebecca appreciated that discretion. People greeted them warmly, and Rebecca could see the curiosity in their eyes. News traveled fast in a small town, and clearly everyone knew who she was and why she had come. Some of the women looked at her with sympathy, others with a kind of knowing encouragement. The men tipped their hats politely and kept their distance, respectful of Benjamin's clear claim even though no official engagement had been announced. At the general store, Benjamin insisted on buying her a new bonnet to replace the one that had been ruined during the journey. "The sun here is fierce," he explained. "You will need good protection." The simple kindness of the gesture moved Rebecca more than grand romantic words might have. This was practical care, attention to her actual needs. When she thanked him, she saw something warm in his eyes, quickly hidden but definitely there. They stopped at a small restaurant for dinner, a simple establishment with wooden tables and benches. The owner, a widow named Martha Chen, who had come west with her Chinese immigrant husband before he died in a mining accident, served them beef stew and fresh bread. The food was simple but good, and Rebecca was surprised to find herself relaxing slightly as they ate. "Tell me about your ranch," she said, wanting to understand the life he was offering her. Benjamin's face lit up in a way she had not seen before. "I've got about 300 acres, with good grassland and a creek that runs year-round. Right now I have got maybe 60 head of cattle and a small horse herd. I have built a house, nothing fancy but solid and weatherproof. 2 bedrooms, a main room with a fireplace, a proper kitchen. There is a root cellar and a smokehouse. I have got a hired hand, Tommy Willis, who is 18 and learning the trade. Good kid, hard worker. He sleeps in the bunkhouse." "What would my responsibilities be?" Rebecca asked directly. She needed to know what was expected. Benjamin considered the question carefully before answering. "I will not lie to you, Miss Crawford. Ranch life is hard work. You would be cooking for myself and Tommy, keeping the house, preserving food for winter, tending a garden. During calving season and branding, there are long days and early mornings. But I would not expect you to do work you are not capable of. I can afford to hire help when needed. What I want most is a true partner. Someone who can make decisions when I am out on the range, someone who has ideas and opinions about how we build our life. I have been alone a long time. I do not want just a servant, I want a companion. The words were simple but carried weight. Rebecca looked at his face, at the earnest hope she saw there beneath the careful control, and felt something shift inside her chest. She was not falling in love, not yet, but she was beginning to see a possibility she had not quite believed in before. Over the next week, Benjamin came to see her every afternoon. Sometimes they walked through town. Sometimes they sat on the porch of the boarding house and talked. He told her about his family back in Missouri, his parents and 3 sisters, all married now with children. He sent them money when he could and letters every few months. He told her about coming west after the war, needing to escape the memories of what he had seen as a young soldier. He had needed space and possibility, somewhere to start fresh. Rebecca told him about her own life, about losing her father and then her mother, about the difficult years in between. She told him about her education, how her father had believed girls should read and think and learn. She told him about the books she loved, the poetry she had memorized, the dreams she had once had of seeing more of the world. Benjamin listened to everything with careful attention, never dismissing her thoughts or interrupting. When she spoke about missing her mother, he reached over and gently touched her hand, just for a moment, offering comfort without presumption. The touch was brief but warm, and Rebecca felt it long after he moved his hand away. "Would you like to see the ranch?" he asked on the 8th day. "I could drive you out there, show you the house, let you see what you would be deciding about. Mrs. Sullivan could come as chaperone if that would make you more comfortable." Rebecca agreed, and the next morning found her sitting beside Benjamin in a sturdy wagon, with Harriet Sullivan settled comfortably in the back as they drove out of town. The countryside was beautiful in a stark way, rolling hills covered in bunch grass and dotted with pine trees. Mountains rose in the distance, purple-blue against the sky. The air smelled of sage and dust, and something wild she could not name. The ranch appeared as they crested a hill, a collection of buildings nestled in a valley with a creek running through it, just as Benjamin had described. The house was log construction, weathered but solid, with a porch across the front and glass windows that caught the morning sun. Near it stood a barn, a smokehouse, a chicken coop, and what must be the bunkhouse. Cattle grazed in the distance, and horses moved in a corral near the barn. A young man emerged from the barn as they approached, wiping his hands on his pants. He had sandy hair and a sunburned face, and he smiled broadly when he saw them. "Miss Crawford, this is Tommy Willis," Benjamin said as he helped her down from the wagon. "Tommy, this is Miss Crawford and Mrs. Sullivan." "Pleased to meet you, madam," Tommy said, ducking his head shyly. "Boss has told me all about you. It will be real nice to have a woman around the place. Boss tries, but his biscuits could be used for building materials." Benjamin actually laughed at that, a warm, genuine sound that transformed his serious face. "My cooking is not that bad." "Yes, sir, it is," Tommy said with the easy familiarity of someone comfortable in his position. "But you have got other skills that make up for it." The house inside was clean but sparse, clearly the home of men who did not spend much time on decoration. But the construction was solid, the floors level, the fireplace large and well built. The kitchen had a good stove, work surfaces, storage. The main room had a table, chairs, a comfortable-looking couch near the fireplace. One bedroom was clearly Benjamin's, simply furnished with a large bed, a dresser, a chest. The other bedroom was empty except for some crates. "I thought you would want to furnish it as you like," Benjamin said. It could be a sewing room or a place for guests or eventually a nursery. Whatever you need it to be. The mention of children made Rebecca blush, but Benjamin did not seem to notice, or if he did, he politely ignored it. He showed her the root cellar stocked with preserves and potatoes, the smokehouse with hanging meat, the chicken coop where a dozen hens scratched and pecked. Everything was well maintained and organized. This was not the home of a careless man. They had lunch on the porch, simple sandwiches that Harriet had brought, and Rebecca watched Benjamin interact with Tommy. The younger man clearly respected and liked his employer, and Benjamin treated him with patience and good humor, answering questions and offering guidance without condescension. This told Rebecca more about Benjamin's character than anything else could have. How a man treated those who depended on him revealed his true nature. On the drive back to town, with Harriet dozing in the back of the wagon and the afternoon sun warm on her shoulders, Rebecca found herself sitting closer to Benjamin than strictly necessary. When the wagon hit a rut and she swayed against him, his arm came around her shoulders to steady her, and this time he did not immediately move it away. They rode like that for several minutes, Rebecca acutely aware of his warmth, his strength, the steady rise and fall of his breathing. "What do you think?" he asked quietly. "Could you see yourself there?" Rebecca took her time answering because she wanted to be honest. "It is more isolated than I expected, but it is beautiful and the house is good. You have built something real there." "I have tried," Benjamin said. "But it is not complete. A ranch is not meant to be run by one person. It needs a family to make it whole." "You could hire more hands," Rebecca pointed out. "That is not what I meant by family." His arm tightened slightly around her shoulders. "Miss Crawford, I know it has not been 2 weeks yet, but I feel I should tell you that I am already certain about this, about you. I know my own mind. I am not a boy who changes his thoughts with the wind. If you decide you want to go back to Pennsylvania, I will understand and hold no grudge. But if you stay, if you agree to marry me, I will spend the rest of my life trying to make you happy. That is not a romantic declaration. It is just the truth." Rebecca's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "How can you be certain? You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you are brave enough to cross a continent alone for a chance at a different life. I know you are honest because you have not pretended feelings you do not have or made false promises. I know you are intelligent and educated, and that you think before you speak. I know you treat everyone with respect, from Mrs. Sullivan to Tommy to the store clerks. I know that when you smile, which is not often enough, it lights up your whole face. That is enough for me to build on. The rest we can learn together." They were approaching town now, and Benjamin moved his arm from her shoulders, returning to a proper distance. But Rebecca felt the loss of that warmth, that connection. She sat in silence as they rolled down the main street, her mind spinning with thoughts and feelings she could not quite organize. That evening, sitting in her room at the boarding house, Rebecca tried to sort through everything. She had come to Spokane with doubts, and many of those doubts remained. She did not love Benjamin Irwin, not yet. Love was not something that happened in a week and a half, no matter what romantic novels suggested. But she liked him. She respected him. She could see the kind of life they might build together, the possibility of something good and real. Was that enough? Could liking and respect turn into love? Or would she spend her life married to a stranger, always feeling that something essential was missing? She thought about Benjamin's patience, how he had never pushed or pressured her, how he had offered her an escape even now, even after she had come all this way, how he had shown her his life honestly, not hiding the hard parts or pretending it would be easy, how he looked at her with warmth and hope, but also with respect, treating her as a person with her own thoughts and choices. She thought about his hands, large and work-worn but gentle when he helped her in and out of the wagon. She thought about his voice, deep and quiet and steady. She thought about the way he had talked about building a family, not with demands or expectations, but with simple hope. The next morning, Rebecca sent word to Benjamin through Mrs. Sullivan that she would like to see him. He arrived within an hour, concern clear on his face. "Is something wrong?" he asked. They were in the front parlor of the boarding house, properly chaperoned by Harriet, who sat in the corner with her mending. Rebecca had spent the morning deciding what to say, how to express what she was feeling. "Nothing is wrong," she said. "But I have been thinking about your proposal, about everything. I need to be honest with you, Mr. Irwin. I do not love you, not yet. I barely know you, but I like you. I respect you. I can see the possibility of something real between us. If you are willing to give me time to let my feelings catch up to my decision, if you can be patient with me while I learn to be your wife in truth and not just in name, then yes, I will marry you." Benjamin's face transformed, hope and joy breaking through his usual careful control. He reached for her hands, holding them gently in his own. "I can be patient, Miss Crawford. I have already waited 28 years to find the right woman. I can wait a while longer for her to be ready." "I want to be clear about what I mean," Rebecca insisted. "I am agreeing to marry you, but I am asking for time before we share a bed as husband and wife. I need to know you better to feel comfortable with you. I do not know how long that will take. Some wives submit to their husbands as a duty, but I do not want that for us. When that part of our marriage begins, I want it to be because we both want it, not because I am obligated." She was blushing furiously by the end of this speech, but she forced herself to look directly at Benjamin as she spoke. This was too important to be left to assumptions and hurt feelings later. If he was not willing to agree to her terms, better to know now. Benjamin was also flushed, but he met her eyes steadily. "I agree to your terms completely, Miss Crawford. I want a willing partner in all aspects of our marriage. I will not pressure you or make demands. When you are ready, if you are ever ready, you can let me know. Until then, I will be content with whatever you are comfortable giving." The relief Rebecca felt was overwhelming. She squeezed his hands, allowing herself to smile at him, truly smile for the first time since arriving in Spokane. "Then yes, Benjamin, I will marry you." He raised her hands to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently, his eyes never leaving hers. "You have made me very happy, Rebecca. I will do everything in my power to make sure you never regret this choice." The wedding took place 3 days later in the small church, with what seemed like the entire town in attendance. Rebecca wore a simple dress she had brought with her, cream-colored with lace at the collar and cuffs, and Harriet helped her pin her dark hair up and loaned her a pearl necklace for luck. She carried wildflowers that Tommy had picked that morning, purple and yellow blooms that smelled of the prairie. Benjamin wore a new black suit that must have cost him dearly, his hair neatly combed, his face freshly shaved. When Rebecca walked down the short aisle on Harriet's arm, having no family to give her away, Benjamin's face showed such open joy that Rebecca felt something warm bloom in her chest. Reverend Matthews spoke about the sanctity of marriage, about patience and kindness and working together through hardship. He spoke about building a life on faith and trust. The words seemed particularly appropriate, and when Rebecca spoke her vows, promising to honor and care for this man she was still learning to know, she meant every word even as her voice shook slightly. Benjamin's voice was rock steady as he made his promises, his eyes locked on hers, his hand warm and solid around her own. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife and said Benjamin could kiss his bride, Benjamin leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She did not pull away. His lips met hers softly, briefly, a kiss of promise rather than passion. Even so, Rebecca felt it down to her toes. The town put on a celebration in the church hall, with food and music and dancing. Rebecca was introduced to so many people her head spun with names and faces. Everyone was kind, welcoming her warmly to the community. The women promised to visit once she was settled at the ranch, offering advice and friendship. The men congratulated Benjamin with handshakes and knowing smiles. When Tommy pulled out a fiddle and began to play, Benjamin led Rebecca in a simple dance. She had not known he could dance, and he admitted he was not very good at it, but he moved her around the floor with careful courtesy, always aware of where she was comfortable and holding her no closer than was proper. "Are you happy?" he asked as they swayed to the music. Rebecca considered the question honestly. "I am nervous," she admitted, "but yes, I think I am happy, or at least I think I could be." "That is all I can ask for right now," Benjamin said. "We will take it one day at a time. There is no rush for anything." As the sun set, they left the celebration and drove out to the ranch in the wagon, now decorated with ribbons and tin cans that rattled behind them. It should have been a joyful sound, but Rebecca felt her nervousness increasing with every mile. She was married now. This was real. She was going to live in that isolated house with this man she barely knew, and she had no idea what would happen next. Benjamin seemed to sense her tension because he started talking, filling the silence with observations about the land, about his plans for the ranch, about anything that might distract her. By the time they arrived, full darkness had fallen, and stars blazed overhead in a way Rebecca had never seen back east. The sky seemed impossibly vast and full of light. Tommy had made himself scarce, probably staying in town for the night to give them privacy. The house was lit with lamps that Benjamin must have arranged earlier, giving it a warm glow. Benjamin helped Rebecca down from the wagon and carried her bags inside. "I will put these in your room," he said. "The bedroom we looked at the other day. I fixed it up some, added furniture. I hope you like it." The room now contained a beautiful brass bed with a thick mattress and colorful quilts, a dresser with a mirror, a wardrobe, and a small desk by the window with a chair. On the desk sat a kerosene lamp and a stack of blank paper with a pen and ink. "I noticed you mentioned liking to write," Benjamin said from the doorway, not entering the room uninvited. "I thought you might want a place to do that. The window looks east, so you will get morning sun when you want it." Rebecca walked to the desk and ran her fingers over the smooth paper. The thoughtfulness of the gesture moved her deeply. He had listened when she talked about herself, remembered small details, and acted on them. This was not the behavior of a man who saw her as just a housekeeper or a means to an end. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "This is perfect." "I will let you get settled," Benjamin said. "Take your time. When you are ready, there is some food in the kitchen if you are hungry. I will be in the main room if you need anything. Good night, Rebecca." "Good night, Benjamin." She changed into her nightgown and wrapper, unpacked her few belongings, and sat at the desk for a long time, looking out at the star-filled darkness. She was married. She was someone's wife now. Rebecca Irwin. The name felt strange in her mind, unfamiliar but not unpleasant. Eventually, she ventured out into the main room. Benjamin had changed into simpler clothes and was sitting near the fireplace, reading a book by lamplight. He looked up when she entered and smiled. "I've heated some water for tea if you would like some," he offered. "Mrs. Sullivan sent a cake as well." They sat together in the quiet house, drinking tea and eating cake, talking about small things. Benjamin showed her where everything was kept in the kitchen, explaining his systems and routines. He asked if she wanted to change anything, rearrange things to suit her preferences. "This is your home now," he said. "You should make it comfortable for yourself." When Rebecca's yawns became too frequent to hide, Benjamin stood and banked the fire. "We have both had a long day. Sleep well, Rebecca." He walked her to her bedroom door and hesitated there for a moment, as if considering whether to kiss her good night. In the end, he simply touched her cheek gently with the backs of his fingers, a gesture so tender it made Rebecca's breath catch. "I am glad you are here," he said softly. "Thank you for taking a chance on me." Then he was gone, disappearing into his own bedroom and closing the door quietly behind him. Rebecca stood in the hallway for a moment, touching her cheek where his fingers had been, before going into her own room and closing her door. The next morning, Rebecca woke to the sound of roosters and the smell of coffee. She dressed quickly and found Benjamin and Tommy already in the kitchen, making breakfast with varying degrees of success. Benjamin was frying bacon while Tommy attempted biscuits that did indeed look more suitable for construction than consumption. "Good morning," Benjamin said, his face lighting up when he saw her. "I hope we did not wake you. I tried to be quiet." "I am normally an early riser," Rebecca assured him. She looked at the chaos in her kitchen and made a decision. "If you gentlemen would let me take over breakfast, perhaps you could handle whatever morning chores need doing." Both men looked relieved and grateful. They disappeared quickly, and Rebecca set about making a proper breakfast. She threw out Tommy's brick-like biscuits and made new ones properly, cooked eggs to go with the bacon, and had everything ready when the men returned. "This is the best breakfast I have had in months," Tommy declared around a mouthful of biscuit. "Boss, you married real well." Benjamin shot him a quelling look, but his eyes were warm when they met Rebecca's. "Tommy is right, though he could use some manners. This is wonderful, Rebecca. Thank you." After breakfast, Benjamin showed Rebecca the rhythms of ranch life. The chickens needed feeding and eggs collected. The milk cow needed milking. The garden, which had been struggling under male care, needed attention. There was always water to carry, wood to chop, 100 small tasks that kept a household running. "I do not expect you to do everything," Benjamin said. "Tommy and I can handle the heavy work. But if you can manage the house and the garden, do the cooking and such, that would free us up to focus on the herd and the horse breeding." "Does that seem fair?" "That seems more than fair," Rebecca agreed. She had expected to work hard. Ranch life was not for the lazy or delicate. They fell into a routine over the following weeks. Rebecca discovered she enjoyed the work more than she had expected. There was satisfaction in keeping a clean house, in cooking good meals, in seeing the garden flourish under her care. She made butter and cheese, put up preserves, baked bread that made both men groan with pleasure. Benjamin was unfailingly considerate, always asking her opinion, thanking her for her efforts, helping with dishes after dinner despite her protests that it was not necessary. He brought her small gifts from town when he went for supplies: fabric for new curtains, seeds for herbs she had mentioned liking, a book of poetry because he remembered her love of reading, and he was patient, always patient. He never pushed for more than she was ready to give. They had fallen into the habit of sitting together in the evenings after Tommy had gone to the bunkhouse. Sometimes they read quietly side by side. Sometimes they talked about the day, about plans for the ranch, about ideas and dreams. Slowly, carefully, they were becoming friends as well as husband and wife in name. One evening in late August, about a month after the wedding, Rebecca looked up from her mending to find Benjamin watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "What is it?" she asked. "I was just thinking how right you look here," he said quietly. "How much better this house feels with you in it, how much better everything feels." Rebecca set down her mending, her heart beating faster. "Benjamin, I need to tell you something. When I agreed to marry you, I was not sure I could ever truly care for you beyond respect and friendship. I thought I might spend my whole life feeling like something was missing, but I was wrong. I do not know exactly when it happened, but somewhere in these past weeks, you have become important to me. I miss you when you are out working. I look forward to our evenings together. When you smile at me, I feel warm inside. I think I am starting to fall in love with you, and it surprises me every day. Benjamin went very still, his book forgotten in his lap. Rebecca, do you mean that? Because I have been holding back, trying not to overwhelm you with how I feel. But I have been halfway in love with you since you stepped off that stagecoach, and I have been falling farther every day. Watching you make this house a home, hearing you laugh at Tommy's jokes, seeing how kind you are to everyone and everything, coming home to find you waiting. It has been the hardest thing I have ever done, keeping my distance when all I want is to hold you and never let go. Rebecca stood up, her heart pounding, and walked over to where Benjamin sat. She took the book from his hands and set it aside, then held out her hand. He took it, looking up at her with hope and longing written plain on his face. "I am ready," she said simply, "to be your wife in truth, if you still want me." Benjamin surged to his feet, pulling her into his arms with a desperation that might have frightened her if she had not felt the careful control underneath. The way he was still monitoring her reactions, ready to stop if she showed any hesitation. But Rebecca had no hesitation left. She wrapped her arms around his neck and lifted her face for his kiss. This kiss was nothing like the brief touch of lips at their wedding. This was heat and hunger kept in check for too long, finally a loud release. Benjamin's mouth moved over hers with barely restrained passion, his arms tight around her waist, one hand cradling the back of her head. Rebecca responded with equal fervor, surprising herself with the intensity of her feelings, with how much she wanted this man who had been so patient, so kind, so steady. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Benjamin rested his forehead against hers. "Are you certain?" "We do not have to rush. I can wait longer if you need more time." "I am certain," Rebecca said firmly. "I love you, Benjamin Irwin. Take me to bed." The words sounded bold and brazen to her own ears, but they felt right. This was her husband, her choice, and she wanted him to know she was choosing this freely, with her whole heart. Benjamin swept her up into his arms, making her gasp with surprise, and carried her toward his bedroom. Their bedroom, Rebecca corrected herself. This would be their room now, their bed, their life shared fully. What happened between them that night was tender and awkward and beautiful. Benjamin was patient and careful, making sure Rebecca was ready at every step. There was some pain, as she had been warned to expect, but also pleasure and connection, and a sense of rightness that made tears spring to her eyes. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, Benjamin holding her close, murmuring words of love and gratitude against her hair. "I love you," Rebecca whispered. "I did not think I could. I did not think this was possible, but I do. I love you so much." "I love you too," Benjamin said, kissing her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "You are everything I hoped for and more than I dreamed possible. I will never stop being grateful that you took a chance on me." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, and when Rebecca woke in the morning to find Benjamin's sleeping face on the pillow beside her, she felt a surge of joy so strong it was almost painful. This was her husband. This was her life, and she had never been happier. The rest of the summer passed in a haze of happiness and hard work. Rebecca threw herself into making the ranch a true home. She sewed new curtains and cushions, adding touches of beauty to the functional space. She expanded the garden, putting in herbs and flowers alongside the vegetables. She befriended the neighboring ranch wives, women who welcomed her into their community with warmth and practical advice. Benjamin taught her to ride properly, patiently correcting her form and encouraging her progress. Soon, she was confident enough to ride out with him sometimes, seeing the extent of their land, understanding the work that went into maintaining it. She learned the names of all the cattle and horses, learned to help with small tasks like feeding and grooming. Tommy teased her gently about becoming a proper ranch wife, and she glowed with pride at the compliment. In September, they attended a town dance. Rebecca wore a new dress she had sewn herself, blue cotton that brought out her eyes, and Benjamin wore his suit from the wedding. They danced together most of the night, no longer the awkward couple from their wedding but partners who moved together easily, anticipating each other's steps. "People are talking about how in love we look," Benjamin murmured as they swayed to a slow song. "Some of them bet our marriage would not last a month. They thought you would go running back to Pennsylvania." "Did you worry about that?" Rebecca asked, pulling back to look at his face. "Every day at first," he admitted. "I kept thinking you would wake up and realize you had made a terrible mistake, that you would find me boring or the work too hard or the isolation too much. I was terrified I would lose you before I even really had you." Rebecca reached up and touched his face tenderly. "You never have to worry about that. This is my home now. You are my home. I am not going anywhere." That winter was harsh, with heavy snows and bitter cold that kept them housebound for days at a time. But the isolation that might have been oppressive felt cozy instead. Rebecca and Benjamin spent long evenings by the fire, talking and reading and making love. Tommy joined them for meals, but gave them privacy otherwise, seeming to sense that the couple needed this time together to deepen their bond. Rebecca discovered she was pregnant in January, and the joy on Benjamin's face when she told him was something she would treasure forever. He became even more protective and attentive, worrying about her constantly, trying to take on more of the work. "I am pregnant, not broken," Rebecca laughed when he tried to stop her from carrying a basket of laundry. "Women have been doing this since the beginning of time. I will be fine." But she was touched by his concern, by the way he would rest his hand on her belly in bed at night, talking to the baby they had created together. He was going to be a wonderful father, she thought, patient and kind and steady, just as he was a wonderful husband. The baby, a boy they named James Benjamin Irwin, was born in early September 1879 during a late summer storm. The birth was hard, and Rebecca labored for nearly 20 hours before the midwife, a capable woman named Ellen Foster, finally placed the squalling infant in her arms. Benjamin had paced the main room the entire time, refusing to leave even when Tommy tried to drag him out to do chores. When Ellen finally called him in to meet his son, he had tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," Benjamin said hoarsely, touching the baby's tiny hand with one finger. "You are perfect. Thank you for this gift." Rebecca was too exhausted to do more than smile, but her heart was full. She had a family again, a husband she loved deeply, a healthy son, a home that felt truly hers. All the doubts she had carried across the country were long gone, replaced by certainty and joy. They christened baby James in October, with half the town in attendance. Harriet Sullivan stood as godmother, and Thomas Green from the general store stood as godfather. The celebration afterward was warm and full of love, with everyone bringing gifts and offering advice and congratulations. "I knew you two would make it," Harriet said, holding baby James with the expertise of a woman who had raised children of her own. "I saw it in how he looked at you from the very beginning, and in how you looked at him once you let yourself. Some things are just meant to be." As winter approached again, Rebecca reflected on how much her life had changed in just over a year. She had arrived in Spokane terrified and doubtful, not sure if she had made the worst mistake of her life. Now she could not imagine being anywhere else or with anyone else. Benjamin had proved through his patience and kindness that love was not just a romantic notion, but something built through daily choices and small acts of care. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. Benjamin's hard work and good instincts paid off, and they were able to expand the herd and buy more land. Tommy, now 19, had become invaluable, and they talked about making him a partner eventually. More neighbors had moved into the area, and Rebecca had a circle of friends she gathered with for sewing circles and social calls. In the spring of 1881, Rebecca gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Margaret Ellen after both their mothers. Benjamin was just as emotional and overwhelmed as he had been with James, cradling his tiny daughter with infinite gentleness. James, now almost 2 years old, was fascinated by his new sister, wanting to touch her constantly under Rebecca's watchful supervision. "Our family is growing," Benjamin said one evening, sitting beside Rebecca on the porch while she nursed Margaret and James played in the yard under Tommy's watchful eye. "Everything I ever wanted is right here. Did you ever imagine this when you first sent that advertisement for a bride?" Rebecca asked. "Did you think it would turn out this well?" "I hoped," Benjamin admitted. "But hope is different from reality. The reality is so much better than anything I imagined. You are so much better. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love someone. Some days I look at you and our children and this life we have built, and I feel like the luckiest man alive." "I feel the same way," Rebecca said softly. "I came here with so many doubts, so certain I was making a desperate choice that I would probably regret. But you proved to me through your patience and kindness that love is real, that it is possible to build something lasting with someone you barely know if you are both willing to try. You gave me time to fall in love with you, and now I cannot imagine my life without you." As the years passed, the Irwin family continued to grow and flourish. Another son, Peter Thomas, was born in 1883, completing their family. The ranch expanded until it was one of the most successful in the region. Tommy married a young woman named Sarah who had come west with her family, and they built a house on the property, becoming true partners in the enterprise. James grew into a serious boy who loved working with the animals and following his father everywhere. Margaret was bold and adventurous, always getting into mischief that made Benjamin laugh and Rebecca shake her head in exasperated affection. Peter was quiet and thoughtful, preferring books to ranch work, and Rebecca delighted in teaching him to read and encouraging his curious mind. In 1888, when Rebecca was 32 and Benjamin was 40, they celebrated their 10th wedding anniversary with a party that seemed to involve half of Spokane. The town had grown significantly, now boasting a proper railroad depot, several hotels, churches, and schools. The rough frontier town of Rebecca's arrival had become a thriving small city, and the Irwin Ranch had grown right along with it. "You ever regret it?" Benjamin asked that night after the last guests had left, and they were alone in their bedroom, the room they had shared fully for nearly a decade. "Do you ever wish you had stayed in Pennsylvania or chosen a different path?" Rebecca looked at her husband, at the face she knew better than her own now, lined with years of sun and work and laughter. She thought about the girl she had been, stepping off the stagecoach with her heart full of doubts and fears. That girl seemed like a stranger now. "Never," she said firmly. "Not once. You gave me everything I did not know I needed. You showed me what real love looks like through your patience and kindness. You built this life for us, for our family. How could I ever regret that?" Benjamin pulled her into his arms, and they lay together in the darkness, comfortable and content in the way only people who have truly shared a life can be. Outside, the wind blew across the prairie, carrying the scent of sage and pine. In the other rooms, their children slept safely. In the barn and pastures, the animals that represented their livelihood were secure. Everything they had built together was strong and lasting. "I love you," Benjamin murmured against her hair. "From that first moment I saw you stepping off the stagecoach, looking so brave and scared at the same time. I knew you were going to change my life. I just did not know how completely." "I love you too," Rebecca said. "Thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for giving me time to realize what we could be together. Thank you for proving that love is real." In the years that followed, the Irwin family became a cornerstone of the Spokane community. Benjamin served on the town council, helping to guide the growth and development of the region. Rebecca helped establish a library and a women's aid society, using her education and natural compassion to help others. Their children grew into fine young adults who made them proud. James eventually took over the ranch, marrying a capable young woman named Catherine, and giving Rebecca and Benjamin their first grandchildren. Margaret surprised everyone by becoming a teacher, traveling to Portland for training before returning to open a school for the surrounding ranches. Peter pursued his love of learning all the way to university, eventually becoming a lawyer and settling in Seattle while maintaining close ties with his family. Tommy and Sarah had children of their own who grew up alongside the Irwin children, and the partnership between the families remained strong. The ranch continued to prosper, weathering economic downturns and harsh seasons through careful management and the strong foundation Benjamin had built. In 1903, Rebecca and Benjamin celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary surrounded by children, grandchildren, friends, and neighbors. They were both in their late 40s now, graying but still healthy and active. The ranch had grown beyond anything Benjamin had imagined that day. He decided to advertise for a bride, but the foundation of it all was still the partnership he and Rebecca had forged. 25 years, Rebecca marveled as they danced together at the party, moving with the ease of long practice. A quarter of a century. Can you believe it? "Every day with you has been a gift," Benjamin said, as romantic at 50 as he had been at 28, though he expressed it more easily now. "I would do it all again in a heartbeat, every single moment, even the doubts and the awkward beginning." Rebecca teased. "Especially those," Benjamin said seriously, "because they taught us both that love worth having is love worth working for. We did not take the easy path, but look what we built because of it." Rebecca looked around at the celebration, at their children and grandchildren, at the friends who had become family, at the life they had created from nothing but hope and patience and daily choices to choose each other. Benjamin was right. They had built something extraordinary. As they grew older, Rebecca and Benjamin settled into the comfortable rhythms of a long marriage. They still worked on the ranch, though James had taken on most of the daily management. They still hosted gatherings and attended church and were active in the community. But they also took time to simply be together, to sit on the porch and watch the sunset, to hold hands and remember all the years behind them. In 1910, when Rebecca was 54 and Benjamin was 62, they became great-grandparents for the first time when James and Catherine's oldest daughter had a son. Holding that tiny baby, Rebecca remembered her own journey to this moment, how it had started with a decision made out of desperation and uncertainty. "What are you thinking about?" Benjamin asked, watching her face. "About how I almost did not come," Rebecca admitted. "I was so afraid. I changed my mind a dozen times before I finally got on that stagecoach. I almost sent a telegram telling you I could not go through with it. If I had been a little less brave or a little more afraid, none of this would exist. Not our marriage, not our children, none of it. But you were brave enough, Benjamin said gently. You took the chance, and I was patient enough to let you find your way to loving me. Together we built all of this. That is what matters. Rebecca leaned against her husband's solid shoulder, feeling his arm come around her automatically after decades of the same gesture. She thought about the girl she had been, full of doubts and fears. She thought about the man who had promised patience and proved it every day. She thought about love that was real because it was built on respect and kindness and daily choices to honor the vows they had made. Yes, she said contentedly. Together, we built all of this, and it was worth every moment of doubt and uncertainty to get here. They sat together in companionable silence, watching their great-grandson sleep, surrounded by the family and life they had created. The sun set over the prairie, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple, the same sky that had witnessed their first meeting all those years ago. The ranch stretched out around them, prosperous and lasting, a testament to what two people could build when they chose each other every day. Benjamin kissed the top of Rebecca's head, a gesture he had repeated thousands of times over their decades together. I love you, he said, as he did every day, the words never growing old or empty. I love you too, Rebecca replied, meaning it with her whole heart, as she always had since that summer night when she finally let herself admit the truth. Thank you for being patient. Thank you for proving love was real. Outside, the wind blew across the land they had tamed together, carrying with it the promise of tomorrow and all the tomorrows after that. Inside, surrounded by family and filled with love, Rebecca and Benjamin Irwin sat content, knowing that the choice Rebecca had made to step off that stagecoach in 1878 had led to a life richer and fuller than either of them could have imagined. The doubts that had brought her here were long forgotten, replaced by the certainty of a love built on patience, proven real by 32 years of choosing each other, and destined to last until their final breaths, and beyond into the legacy they left behind. The years continued their steady march, bringing both joy and sorrow as all years do. In 1915, Benjamin fell ill with pneumonia during a particularly harsh winter. He was 67 years old, and though he fought hard, his body was worn from a lifetime of hard work. Rebecca never left his side during those difficult weeks, holding his hand and reminding him of all they had shared, all the reasons to keep fighting. He recovered, though more slowly than either of them liked, and the illness left him weakened. He could no longer do the heavy ranch work, but he remained active in management and decision-making. Rebecca, at 59, was still strong and capable, and she took on more responsibilities to compensate for Benjamin's limitations. Their children and Tommy's family rallied around them, making sure they were cared for and supported. I am not ready to leave you yet, Benjamin told Rebecca one evening as they sat together watching yet another sunset. We have a few more years left in us. We have as many years as God grants us, Rebecca replied practically. And I intend to enjoy every single one of them with you. They did enjoy those years, though they passed more quickly than either wanted. They watched their grandchildren grow and marry and have children of their own. They saw the ranch continue to prosper under James's capable management. They witnessed Spokane transform from a rough frontier town into a modern city with automobiles and electric lights and all the conveniences of the 20th century. But through all the changes, their love remained constant. Benjamin still looked at Rebecca as if she was the most precious thing in his world. Rebecca still felt her heart warm when Benjamin smiled at her. They still held hands without thinking about it, still moved around each other with the unconscious coordination of people who had shared space for decades, still chose each other every single day. In 1920, at their 42nd wedding anniversary celebration, Rebecca looked around at the enormous gathering of family and friends and felt overwhelmed by gratitude. 5 children, 14 grandchildren, and 6 great-grandchildren, all stemming from that single brave decision she had made at 22 years old to trust a stranger's promise of patience and partnership. "Thank you," she whispered to Benjamin as they sat together, too old now for dancing but content to watch the younger generations enjoy themselves. "For what?" Benjamin asked, though his eyes were soft with understanding. "For everything. For being exactly who you promised to be in your letters. For giving me time to fall in love with you. For building this life with me. For 42 years of choosing me every single day." "It was never a choice," Benjamin said simply. "It was always you. From the moment you stepped off that stagecoach with fear and courage written all over your face, it was always going to be you. Loving you was the easiest thing I ever did. The only hard part was waiting for you to love me back, but even that was worth it, especially that." Rebecca leaned her head on his shoulder, and Benjamin wrapped his arm around her, and they sat together surrounded by the fruits of their patient love, knowing that whatever time they had left would be spent exactly like this, together, until the very end and beyond, into the legacy that would outlive them both. Benjamin Irwin passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1923 at the age of 75, with Rebecca holding his hand just as she had for 45 years of marriage. His death left a hole in her heart that would never fully heal, but Rebecca found comfort in their children and grandchildren, in the ranch that still bore the mark of his careful stewardship, in the countless memories of a life well lived together. She lived another 12 years, dying in 1935 at the age of 79, still sharp-minded and surrounded by family until the end. Her last words were about Benjamin, about how she was ready to see him again, about how their patience with each other had proved that love was real and lasting, and worth every moment of doubt and uncertainty it took to find it. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together, their graves marked with simple stones that bore their names, their dates, and a single phrase that captured the essence of their story: patient love, proven true. The ranch continued in the family for generations, each inheritor learning the story of how it all began, of the brave woman who came west with doubts, and the patient man who proved love was real. The story became a family legend, told and retold, a reminder that the best things in life are worth working for, worth being patient for, worth choosing every single day. And in the hearts of all who descended from that union forged in patience and proven in daily choices, Rebecca and Benjamin's love lived on, as real and lasting as the land they had claimed together, as true as the vows they had spoken and kept, as permanent as the legacy they had built from nothing but hope and courage and the willingness to give love time to grow. Their story proved what they had learned together that first year of marriage and confirmed over 45 years of partnership. That love is not just a feeling but a choice, not just a promise but an action, not just a beginning but a lifetime of patient, daily choices to honor the person you have chosen and to build something real and lasting together. That was the gift Benjamin gave Rebecca with his patience, and the gift Rebecca gave Benjamin with her courage. Together, they proved that love, real love, the kind that lasts beyond death and echoes through generations, is always worth the wait and always worth the work of building it into something strong enough to last forever.